Hi, flamethrowers. Amira here, and welcome to this edition of Behind the Burn. This month, I'm going to take you behind the scenes of my trip last fall to Lausanne, Switzerland, when I went to do archival research at the Olympic Study Center. I captured some footage while I was there, and I want to share with you a little bit about my time over looking through the Olympic archives. But before we get into all of that, I wanted to pick the winners of last month's giveaway. So, drum roll, please. That's this is my drum sound. I'm sorry. This month, Nicole Haas and Jamie Hokinson. Yeah, that's right. Pick two names, double the trouble for 2020. So, Jamie, Nicole, please reach out to us so we can get you some buy ad merch. All right, let's get started. Last year, I was fortunate enough to receive this Junior Faculty Research Fellowship from the Society of the History of American Foreign Relations, also known as Schaefer, to support research for my upcoming book. So last September, I headed off to Switzerland to do just that. Sightseeing, it was time to get to work and head over to Lausanne where the Olympic archives are. The Olympic Museum opened in 1993 and sits just a few miles from the IOC headquarters in Lausanne. It boasts over 10,000 artifacts and is the largest archive of the Olympic Games in the world. And you have to apparently high jump to get in the door. If you head to the museum from the Lake Geneva side, you start by climbing seemingly a million stairs that are inscribed with the names of all of those who've lit the Olympic cauldron. Being the nerd that I am, I of course had to stop and look for my favorites. That's Rafer Johnson. He won silver in the decathlon in 1956, then gold in 1960. They also let him be the flag bearer in those games, which was a fact that used to surprise me until I remembered that the United States loves to use black athletic labor to bolster its national image. He lit the cauldron in LA in 1984. Of course, there's Muhammad Ali, who also competed in those 1960 games in Rome. Then he was just 18 years old and known as Cassius Clay. There, he won a gold medal, which he later alleged he threw in a river back in Louisville to protest racial discrimination, although friends disputed that account and said he just lost it a year after the Olympic Games. Either way, in Atlanta in 1996, he was awarded a replacement medal and also selected, of course, to light the torch. And these emotional images of him battling through Parkinson's while lighting the torch demonstrate how, in the last years, in the last chapter of his life, his radicalism had been kind of whitewashed and pampered over. And once again, in an Olympic context, he was able to be embraced as an American icon. So after I finally stopped reading the stairs, I made it up to the Olympic Park. The Olympic Park wraps around the museum and features artwork depicting sports. It's not just the summer games that get love here. I took a picture of curling specifically for Shireen. And one of my favorite pieces is actually by a woman named Nikki de Saint-Phalle, who was a French-American artist. And this is her piece, Les Footballeuses. Shireen's probably groaning at my French. She was a self-taught painter, sculptor, and filmmaker, a feminist artist who broke her way into the male-dominated art industry and seemed worthy of shouting out here on Burn It All Down. Other pieces of note, they have 100 meters if you want to test your time. And then these weird abs that actually rotate and come apart and back together. It's strange, but here's a picture of it. And last but not least, they have the Olympic flame. After I explored a little bit, I figured it was time to get to work. So I made it up the stairs. I'm now up at the museum, but the museum's over there, and I'm actually going to go right up here to the Olympic Study Center where I do archival research. Hi again. I'm taking a nice break outside after a few hours in the archives, and I want to give you a brief peek at what happens when you do archival research before we head into the museum. So I've mostly been reading through a lot of logs about debates over competition for women in the 1920s, but there's two things I want to highlight because they are relevant to discussions we've had on the podcast. One, early letter in 1930 over the discussion of policing the boundaries of women's sports. So this is a letter from the American Olympic Committee to the IOC containing the text of a letter they received from a quote-unquote interested sports fan who is upholding the participation of feminine athletics and concerned about one such athlete who this fan cited, quote, her bass voice, her height, her 10.5-inch shoes, and cites her dominant performances as cause for concern. The letter goes on to say this needs to be prevented and urges, quote, rules that need to be made to keep competitive games for normal feminine girls and not monstrosities. And the second thing I wanted to highlight was something from 1975, which features a very familiar argument or defensive kind of response when a simple question is asked. How many women do you have involved in your federation? How many women in positions of power or administration are there governing the bodies of sport? Take a look what the Norwegians had to say to this question in 1975. In responding to the survey about women in their federations, the Norwegians said, there was no women in any part of their board or in their president of their national federations, etc. But they wanted to make sure that it was known that the dearth of women in these positions was because there was a lack of quote-unquote qualified women, and that if there was any conversation about the so-called discrimination of women in administration of sports, one had to remember that women were not interested or qualified and that they shouldn't be hired just because they were women. LOL, sob, sounds like familiar BS to me. Okay, the third and final stop of the tour is the museum itself. Before we go into the museum, I wanted to think about the ways public history is still very political and has an agenda. And so if you follow the show, you know that there's issues with the Olympics, certainly. Follow No LA 28, for more information. We featured a great discussion about that a few episodes ago, but this certainly is a very flattering museum to the IOC. So you'll see there's things I grumble with inside, but let's take a peek. So immediately when you walk in, you notice this kind of spinning contraption with all of the colors, Olympic colors, and the words on them about their supposed values. Peace, friendship, equity, respect. And yet, well, there are certainly values. And the museum walks you through the kind of history of the Olympic movement and the philosophy behind it. So a lot of the old kind of artifacts from the early games. They also have a display of Olympic torches through the ages. Also, the official stuffed mascot of each games, which creeped me out a little bit. Miniature models of Olympic centers. They had jerseys on display. A nice display of Paralympic athlete equipment. The signatures from all the Olympians at the last game. The whole wing about the Olympic Village, which, fascinates me. And it's not just the facilities or the cafeteria. I'm particularly interested in the other extracurricular activities that happen. If you remember, in Rio, they gave out 350,000 condoms, 100 female condoms, 175 packets of lube. It worked out to be about 42 condoms per athlete. So I'm waiting to see what Tokyo looks like. Tried my hand at the interactive features of the museum. This was a speed reflex test. I was pretty good at this. I was not good at skiing.
Amira, you don't even make the Junior Olympics.
Michael was with me. He was much better. Here's a long display they have of all the various kinds of Olympic bodies. And of course, they have medals. These are from Rome in 1960. Lastly, you can stand on a medal stand yourself. So you know what I had to do. So that's the brief tour of the Olympic Park, the archives, the museum, very much advancing this kind of idea of the IOC and the Olympic movement as lofty ideals and global harmony. I think there's moments where you can see these tensions and these cracks. So my favorite sculpture is what I'll leave you with. So this sculpture is at the base of the museum, right on the banks of Lake Geneva. And when I see it, although you can look at it as they're carrying the Olympic banner forward, I also see it as them struggling under the weight of it, struggling to hold it up, being crushed by it at times. And so as much as it reminds me of the games, it also reminds me of the people displaced by them, of the destruction that they leave in their wake, and all of the contradictions of the Olympic movement. All right, thank you so much for coming along with that journey with me through the Olympic maze of artifacts and propaganda and other things over there. Um, Thank you so much again for supporting us, for being our patrons. From the bottom of all of our hearts, it means so much to have your support as we try to bring you this podcast every week. So please send us listener mail for future Behind the Burn segments. And of course, for this month's giveaway, if you comment below with an answer to this question, you'll be entered to win more Biad merch. So my question for this month's giveaway, I'll keep on the Olympics theme. What is your favorite Olympic event? So if you're tuning into the Olympics this summer, even if you're watching it critically, what event are you most looking forward to? Are you a swimming person? Do you like track and field? Do you like fencing? What are you most excited about and looking forward to following when the Olympic Games open up in July? Enter below, leave your answer, engage with us, send us your listener mail. And until then, burn on, not out.